Nothing happens to
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the July the 8th, 2025 Supervisors Meeting. Is there any changes to the agenda?
I have none. I have none.
I have none. Meet with department heads and elected officials. Sarah Doty, County Auditor.
Good morning. I sent an email out this morning, but it was about 10 minutes ago, so you probably haven't seen it yet. Booking rooms for ISAC for the fall, so if you need a room still, please let me know. They also did tell me that our numbers have been kind of down compared to what they used to be, so if they continue, they won't give us the group rate any longer, which I Googled some things, and I don't think that's gonna be a huge deal. If not, 'cause it looks like it's about the same anyways. But in that case, they won't let me book for everybody in the future, so we'll see how that goes, but, if you need a room, let me know and I'll get us all booked. But other than that, just plugging away, business as usual.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Paul Dirks, IT.
Good morning. Just keeping busy like always, getting everything ramped up for the new fiscal year, but nothing new for the board.
Thank you. Sheriff Clendenny.
Same for us, plenty going on, really no major news for the board this week. Jail was at 89 adults, 1 juvenile. We had 13 out of county this morning, plus the 1 juvenile.
89.
89, yep.
And we have a slew of them going north. We had a very productive day yesterday.
We're anxiously awaiting that paperwork.
As you know.
We were very busy all day yesterday, but we were very, very.
Remember, he wants you to go get that paperwork right now.
The judges are working on it as we speak, so.
North to Oakdale.
Pardon?
North to Oakdale.
We had several who just came in and pled and asked for immediate sentencing, so.
All right.
I think there were at least 3 or 4 of them. It was just a very productive day as far as getting cases resolved and things moving on.
Well, we got you. Is there anything else, Lisa?
We're starting to prepare for National Night Out. We're gonna be bringing some boxes over to the courthouse. We're gonna do another school supply drive. So we're gonna try to get those boxes out later today. So for those who want to donate school supplies, what we do at National Night Out is we have someone who graciously donates a number of backpacks, anywhere between 50 and 75, depending on what kind of rate he can get on them, and then we literally fill the bags with school supplies and hand those out to the kids at National Night Out. We did it last year. It was a huge success, I think, because of the timing of National Night Out being right before school starts. Those seem to be a better giveaway than some of the other things. This is something that parents could really use. I know I don't have a kid in school anymore, but I remember how expensive it was to get everything for your kids, especially if you have multiples. So this is just a good way to kind of alleviate some stress on the parents for school supplies and give the kids something fun, but obviously that depends on all of us donating as much as we can. So we'll be getting those boxes. We're probably gonna put one on the 2nd floor outside of our office and then down on 1st floor because it truly gets the most amount of traffic, I think. So we're hoping to get those filled. We'll have them out for a couple of 3 weeks, and then a few days before National Night Out, we'll start filling them up.
How soon are you gonna set that, how soon are you gonna set those up?
I think we're gonna try to get them out, depending on weather, because I don't want them dragging cardboard around in the rain. I walked back to our office in the downpour yesterday, so we're discouraging that. But I think either later this afternoon or first thing in the morning,
Okay.
we'll get those set up. And then we're gonna have them in various sites, City Hall, the Burlington Police Department. Kevin, if your office is willing to have one, we'll have one over there. I'm also gonna get a hold of Brittany over at the library and see if she'll let us put one there. So we're hoping to fill about 50 to 75 backpacks with stuff.
What night is National Night Out?
National Night Out is always the first Tuesday in August, so this year it's August 5th, from 6 to 8 p.m. Down at the riverfront. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, we're just busy. Yesterday, we were productive.
Natalie, how's the recording going?
Good morning, just the same, business as usual, everything's going well, nothing new to share.
Okay, thank you. Chris Lee, conservation.
I'm excited to report that Rathbun was on site yesterday boring in new water lines, so supposedly they're gonna have those bored in today, and then we'll have to get a plumber down there to make the connection. Cautiously optimistic that we might have running water by the end of the week. If that is the case, we're probably just gonna close the nature center down on Friday so that we can, get all the lines flushed and then do a deep clean of the nature center, because we've been water there for 2+ months. Place to get kind of gross, so, we're gonna bring the whole staff in and, do that. We got most of the field staff down there today doing a bunch of work, there around the nature center, it needed a bunch of maintenance, so, we're doing a bunch of things down there and we'll be for the week, so. We don't have camps going on this week, so we're gonna try to bang a bunch of that out before camps start back up next week.
Thank you. Rick, are you here for the thing? You got anything else to add to Lisa?
No,
Okay, thank
just
you.
here for eye candy again, huh?
Well, here for the windmill work session, so yeah.
He's here for all things windmills.
Jared, last year?
Kind of the same thing, like I said, the work session here, but apart from that, nothing on the agenda. We do have a minor subdivision was out for review. I believe it was on the city's agenda for last night, so we'll have that to you likely next week. Other than that, just been keeping very busy lately it's been a busy last couple weeks for sure.
Okay, thank you. Rodney Blaisner, how's the maintenance department?
Okay, I've just got a lot of things going on. Thankful for Lisa's office efficiency. I can scratch one of those to-do lists going to court today, so appreciate that. Other than that, just got an agenda item today.
Okay, thank you. Chris Fogel, Public Health.
Good morning, we're just busy, nothing to report.
Any more cases of anything going around, measles or whooping cough, still on the rapid?
Always want people to be careful about measles. If you haven't had your vaccine, we've not had a documented case in our county, but there is measles, has been measles cases in the state of Iowa. Always want to educate people on whooping cough. Very important that whooping cough acts a lot just like you've got a regular cold, you cough and cough and cough until it gets to the point where some people are even vomiting from the cough. The problem with that is they think it's a regular cold, and the whole time that they're coughing, they're spreading this. So really encourage people that if they've had some exposure to whooping cough, or are finding themselves with a cough that just is very nagging cough, keeps getting, and it makes a whoop sound, so that's why it's called whooping cough. You have that kind of cough, it's time to see your healthcare provider, because we have had some cases of that in our community, so really want to try to educate the public about getting in and seeing their doctor or their physician.
Thank
When
you.
you cleared your throat, kinda sounded weird.
If I missed anybody. Okay, moving on, correspondence, either of you gentlemen have any correspondence?
Brian.
Oh, Brian.
Last but not least.
I'm ready to move on
How
to
terrible would that be?
correspondence.
Everybody
It'll be about
disappointed.
bridges.
We're
the whole morning.
Sorry, Brian.
I see how you are. 99 is moving along well. I'm hoping by the end of this week, they're done with the main line asphalt, so that would be a good thing. I've started to get a few calls from people about driveways and stuff. They're just gonna need to hang in there and be patient. We are coming along. There will be no big bumps in the driveways or anything like that when we're done, but obviously, everything doesn't happen at the exact same time. So after they're done with this, they're gonna move back on the gravel road approaches and do the asphalt approaches. We like up and down the 4-lane, we were doing, as part of that project with the DOT, we did 50-foot wide approaches. Along this, we're doing 35-foot approaches to be a little more economical, I guess. But 99 does present, we don't do that everywhere on our county roads, but 99 presents some unique challenges for our motor graders because of all the curves, and it's just hard to see traffic coming when you're trying to do your job. So we went ahead, for a safety reason, went ahead and put that in this project. So they will probably fall back, do that work, and then we'll be coming along and doing shouldering and tying everything together. So not done with everything, but the asphalt itself will wrap up, and it's definitely a better ride than it used to be. I did mention before, we've already had a couple blow-ups during some of that really hot stretch, so There's already a couple places where the old concrete underneath popped and the contractor was able to take a motor grader and kind of level it back out. So, we're gonna leave that alone because that's gonna be the life for the rest of this pavement. That's just the way that goes, unfortunately. But yeah, I think all things considered, so far it's gone well. The Danville Bridge is getting closer and closer, depending on the spotty rain that they've got in the forecast and stuff. I think there's a reasonable chance we could see that possibly open next week. So that's good news, and actually I was able to get out to it yesterday and drove across it at a fairly reasonable speed, and it rides really nice. It's as funny as it sounds, for all the money we spend, it is really hard to go stick a new bridge and new approaches in the middle of an old road and make it as smooth as you really want it. It's just a very difficult thing, and I was pretty pleased, to be honest with you. Northbound was what I would call perfect for the situation. Southbound, wouldn't say, in my estimation, I'd call it perfect, but it's a pretty darn good ride. So that was a good thing. It's the little victories we'll take, I guess. And then last week, I don't know, it was Chris or somebody asked me about the ramps that are closed at 61 and 34, which is, I'll mention, again, that's a DOT project, but I did reach out to the DOT. They mentioned two things. One, that there's 2 stages to that entire project, which makes sense because obviously they only have 1 lane closed where they're doing their work, so they'll move over and probably do similar work in the other lanes. Those ramps will stay closed through the duration of that project, so sometime in late fall of this year, those ramps will reopen. They also mentioned that the ramp closures were a request by the city of Burlington for safety reasons. So that the original part of the project did not include that closure. But there was apparently some concerns from somebody regarding safety, so that's why that ended up happening. But either way, they're gonna be closed until late fall from the sounds of it. And that's just an update on that project.
Okay,
So, thank you.
thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
hold on, Jim. One more thing. I forget this, and then I'll bring it up during public input, and who knows, that might be busier today. The public health building, that's become, people have asked about that, so I'll give you an update on that. I did get the consultant called, let him know that the plat had been reviewed. Thank you to Trent for that. I didn't hear anything from the board, so I'm assuming you guys were good with it also. And I reviewed it, it looked fine to me. So that is going to, consultant's gonna go ahead and start that into the city's process.
Sweet.
The only thing I gotta find out yet is whether the city waives whatever fee there is for their process for another governmental entity, or whether we need to process a check for that application process. I think it goes through their version of a subdivision process, basically. And once that's done, I believe it'll be ready for Trent to create basically a new legal description, and you guys can set about, last time we talked, a sealed bid process or whatever, but we can have another work session, I feel like, at that point, and truly be productive as to setting plans for the future of that, for how you wanna dispose of it.
Good.
Great, thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brent, appreciate that. That it, Brian?
That's it this time,
Okay,
thanks.
now I can move on to correspondence. Either you gentlemen said you had some, or?
I had none.
Well, I got one here that, I found in my front door. Correspondence. Found that last night. It said, the Moines County Supervisors. It's plural. And this is from, says, the Moines County Supervisors. Thank you so much for your support of the rail car project at Danville. We celebrated our grand opening last month on June the 12th and had 88 people attend the morning program with speeches from our Lieutenant Governor and Deb Durham, Ohio Economic Development Authority, and Penny, I guess it's
Bocek.
Bocek. Okay, Senator Grassley's regional director, and our special visitors from Germany who were responsible for locating our authentic German cattle car. In the afternoon, 335 people came to celebrate Anne Frank's birthday with us. Every week since June the 12th, we have hosted group tours, including a large bus tour from the Putnam Museum in Davenport. We hope to be the tourist destination for Southeast Iowa, but more importantly, our hopes is, for generations to come, we will learn the valuable lesson of the horrors of the Holocaust. With hatred and indifference change people. Thank you for your continued support. Bob and Janet Hessler of the Danville Station Committee. And she did send 3 of these, and I guess there, and I'm going to put mine on file for, so the county's got one. There we go. Okay. Now we have payroll reimbursement claims in the amount of $5,279.25. Non-cashable taxes is 0.
Motion to approve.
Second. Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yep.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have a resolution 2025-037, appropriate funds to operate county offices and departments for the fiscal year 2026. In accordance to section 331.434(6) of the Code of Iowa, the Board of Supervisors of Moines County, Iowa is required to appropriate funds to operate all officers and departments of said county for the fiscal year 2026. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors do hereby authorize appropriations for fiscal year 2026. Followed are the amounts of the department, the following Schedule A are hereby appropriated from resources of such funds so itemized. Now, you want me to itemize all of them, or?
I believe that's for the
That's-
Mahasi, the mental health region.
Yeah.
They end operations June 30th, and so they have to transfer, I don't remember how much, $1 million or $2 million back to the state, but they can't write the check until they have spending authority. So this gives them spending authority to send money back to the state.
I move to approve.
Total amount is $42,258, or $42,250,149.
That's the total for the county. and
That's
our
the total for the
fiscal-
county,
And
yeah.
the
And-
entities we're fiscal
yeah,
agent for.
Yeah. We have a motion on.
Oh, second, I'm sorry.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have department letters with cash on hand. Okay, for the auditor's office, $1,944.55. For the recorders, $2,513.65. Got some good paper down there. Wow, it's stuck together. assessor's office. There's a total of $15 cash on hand in our office. That doesn't have enough money to myself off. And, GIS commission, they have $25 on hand in petty cash amount. Sheriff's office, they have a total of $200, $100 cash and claims submitted. And then in, conservation, we got $25. And public health, got $25.
That's where all the money is.
That's where all the money is, I can tell you. Secondary roads. Petty cash is $64.76, receipts $85.24. And we will stamp these afterwards.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane Campbell.
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah. Now we have lease agreement between the Moines County and Strike Stabilization Center. Have anything to say about that, Rodney?
Good morning, yeah, last week we had, the same agreement, but it was a 12-month lease. And in that time period, they, imagined the possibilities in the new ASO from the state. They had just, I think they got funding for like like 3 months. So they had, asked the county for a month-to-month lease, to reflect that instead of the 12-month lease. So it's basically the same lease as it has been, but it's just a month-to-month lease instead of a 12-month lease agreement.
Yep.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane Campbell.
Yep.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah. Personnel actions. We have 3 for the correctional center. We'll do them 3 first.
Or the back one, whichever. I just put the edited one on top so you can see what changes were made.
Okay. The first one is for, Chloe Ravencraft, part-time correctional officer. Anniversary, 6-month step increase from $17.69 an hour to $21 an hour. The next one is for Dominic Foster, part-time correctional officer. Anniversary, 18-month step increase. Previous rate, $52,662. The new rate is $53,827. I'm losing my voice, gentlemen. Excuse me. The next. I don't know what's going on here.
You're
Not
on
whooping
whooping.
call. I'm not hooping yet. Patrick,
Overzall.
Pozazak, correctional officer. It's a rehire, 77.11 hours. Rehiring full-time at 24-month step increase, $54,886.03.
Motion to approve all 3.
Second.
Sarah?
Shane Campbell.
Yep.
Tom Broker.
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. county attorney. First one is for Brandon Weddle. Leave of absence 19.81 hours. And the next one is for Kay Hagan. Anniversary, previous rate $39,946. New rate $40,782.
Motion to approve both.
Second. Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. And the next one is for the auditor, which is Laney Blutnager, payroll deputy. 18.5 hours unpaid for 6/26/25 and 6/27/25, 7/2.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have reports. We have the recorder's report for fees collection in June 2025. And we have the Veterans Affairs report for fees collected in June 2025. These will be on file in the auditor's office for your reviewing at your own discretion.
Man, everybody just seems so happy today. Woo! Must be passing out free bags of candy after the meeting or something.
I think it's just you.
I thought I seen Ryan Drew's. What's going on? What's going on?
Now we have the minutes for the regular meeting on July 1st, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay. Do we have any other business?
I've done.
I have none.
I have none.
Future agenda items?
I have none.
I have none. Do you have any? Committee reports. I did not have any committee.
I did not.
Workforce Development Board. Just going down, there's one name exciting.
Time for public input. We'll give the public 2 minutes to call 319-753-8203 extension 4. That's 319-753-8203 extension 4, or email board@dmcounty.com. That's board@dmcounty.com. Meanwhile, anybody in here have anything they want to say while we're waiting?
Are we gonna be be able to talk during the work session? Or would this be the time to say something, or read something?
This would be the time to say something, because during the work session, the supervisors really need to go, we've got almost all the information that we need.
Okay.
And the complaints, we've probably got, every complaint, we
This
got
won't-
10 or 15 of them.
Okay, this will only take like a minute, maybe two. Come up here so you can hear me. I have the cough that you're getting for the last 6 weeks, so. What I wanted to let you know, is anyone aware of what came out with the executive order from President Trump last night? Okay, this just came down. Trump directs Treasury to limit wind and solar tax credits. President Trump on Monday directed the Treasury Department to take a strict approach to limit which projects can get access to wind and solar tax credits. Did this through executive order. The recently passed Republican mega bills ends the tax credits for wind and solar credits unless solar and wind farms start producing electricity by 2028, which we know in the bill, or unless they start construction in the next year. Trump's executive order tells his administration to limit which projects can count as having started construction. Specifically, he directs the Treasury Department to restrict, in quotation marks, the use of broad safe harbors unless a substantial portion of a subject facility has been built. It also says the department should try to prevent the artificial acceleration or manipulation of eligibility. So you have to be careful that we're not being pushed. So they're gonna, about 90% of these projects are gonna be shut down. Trump also directed the Interior Department, which manages energy production on federal land and waters, to look for and eliminate any policies that give preferential treatment to wind and solar. And then it goes on about, but that's what was in that bill. So that's an executive order that, did you understand everything I said?
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, I will email this to you, you can have this, so you can look.
Where'd you
This
find
came from
that?
the Hill, John Solomon, who's a
Okay.
reporter,
Okay.
and this came down late, and this is what they're doing. So, just wanna let you know that. The other thing I wanna give you is, I'm gonna give you this folder, has all my work in here. This is about, and thank you so much for the wildlife part, the 2 pages, thank you for protecting and looking out for the birds and the bats. I appreciate that. But here's all, this gives you, I wanted to give you this, so when it comes down to it, that to go into when mitigation comes in, this is every month from last year's fall migration and this year's spring migration every day. There's a couple days that are like 500 or 1,000, but it gives you every day at their altitude and how many came through, okay?
I thought we had something similar to that. so
I'm
that's
giving
completely
you
different.
all of it.
Okay.
I'm giving you, and here is all of the numbers. This is important. It gives you, we had, just to let you know, fall migration, we had 92,373,372 birds. And in there, we had, just to kind of give you an idea, September at 400-foot average altitude of their migratory pattern, 400 feet. We had 601,800 birds that came in at that height. And at 700 feet, we had 3,178,400 birds. So in October, at 300 feet altitude, we had 239,600 birds. So I kind of give you an idea what's coming in, the soaring birds, the ducks, and having a turbine that tall, if this goes through, they're gonna go right through it. And this will be the tallest structure they have coming down in their migration, will be these tall 750-foot turbines. So they're gonna be going right into it. So in the spring migration, we had 55,286,400 birds, and you can kind of look down, we had, at 100 feet, we had 1,200 birds. 500 feet, we had 1,096,000 birds. 400 feet, 158,000, so you kind of see the breakdown of how I did that. Yeah, I think it's important to see that how many are gonna go right through. That's their altitude, they go through the turbines. So I hope you find that interesting and kind of give you an idea when they do mitigation. And to find out the dates, you can go into that folder I gave you to find the dates when they're coming in. So if they do mitigation, to know, okay, September, this week in September, we had there was 8 million one night that came through. 8 million. There's only 3.5 billion birds that come up the Mississippi Flyway. Only half make it here. So 1.75 billion make it through. And just think, our little Des Moines County has about 10%, not counting all the other counties up and down in the states. So we have a massive amount of birds that come through. And I appreciate you all looking into that and trying to help protect them. I appreciate that. Great, thank you.
Okay, hearing from nobody else, could nobody call in?
I just emailed the information from whitehouse.gov to you three.
Thank you.
With an eye, we're out of here.
Aye.
Aye. We're gonna have a work session.
That email was to the board?
No, I couldn't get that to come up. It's to you three individually.
This is just a draft. It's
your
it's just in there
individual
for
addresses.
public. And go through these, so they're just general awareness of what's out there. So it's, we're not gonna go read
called you this morning.
And the walleye, are there?
It was.
I thought you said so they won't read.
Yeah, but I think
We're on the end.
My
I talked with the other stuff.
3D, smaller things, 3D contrast for rabbit.
If not, this is what I want you to my go-to is. Well, and here you go, this is every day, migration day, all the way from, for a whole year, so you guys can look at the every day and see what comes in, so you can get an idea.
I'm not sure.
I get it, so I get it off the house, so.
Otherwise, we can look at it and give it back to you.
Well, he's getting ready to
No, because most of the stuff, which is extra stuff, Andy did this.
That's exactly right.
Good job.
Yes, yes. The newest thing.
So she's fine now, energy wise, she's still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's get it on.
She has some damage already and
Okay, Jared, you ready?
You are.
All right. How about you, Zach? You ready?
Right, we're gonna be at
Okay. Okay, we're here for the wind. Solar setting operation for the wind and solar and battery energy system workstation. For July the 8th, 2025, and it is 9:57. Jared, Zach, you kinda wanna start this off, go over what you got for us here?
Sure, I'll maybe give a little overview of a couple things, and then Jerry's got anything to add, and then I think we're kinda open to just discussion, but I think maybe picking a certain section and just kinda starting with it and going through. I think we were maybe thinking decommissioning, but it could be, we could start at the very beginning or somewhere else if you want. But, for the work session a couple weeks ago, we took basically the ordinance we just did for Lee County, which was based off of Moines County's ordinance, but had some modifications to it and kind of merged it again with some of the setbacks and things that they had in there were different, so, kind of brought the two together and sent a copy to you last week. And it's right on the front page, but just a reminder, so there's text highlighted in yellow. I'm gonna take a step back first too, just wanna clarify this too, so right now you have two ordinances, so this ends up being one ordinance, but covers not just the wind, but solar and battery storage as well. So it's one ordinance that covers all three. There's text throughout that's highlighted in yellow, so that's stuff that was not in the original ordinance that's currently adopted, but stuff that was added into the Lee County ordinance that we had done. And then there's some text in red, so that's basically new stuff based on conversations we've had in the last couple of weeks that wasn't in the Lee County ordinance or in the original Des Moines County ordinance. There's a couple new sections that were added in here as well. When we did Lee County, there's one on wildlife monitoring and mitigation, a section on emergency response, a little expansion on decommissioning abandonment. And Jared, you may have to remind, but I don't remember, was the enforcement during project lifespan, is that new as well?
That is new as well.
Yep, that's what I thought, okay. So, some new sections. Also, the permitting section is split into two steps. That was not how that was done originally, so, that's just like the basic overview. I don't know if you've had much of a chance to go through it, but there's a lot of yellow and red in there, so you can see there's quite a few differences. I don't know, Jared, do you have anything else you want to mention?
And just to note that some of the changes in red, well, the changes in red are primarily based on feedback and previous discussions with the board over the past couple of months. Again, the yellow was initially included in the Lee County ordinance, but I should note that some of the stuff from that was actually based on similar responses that we obtained from the public at public meetings in Lee County. So some of those in yellow would address some of the topics that have been addressed here recently as well, and particularly the wildlife mitigation, and then some elements of the emergency response as well.
One of your notes you mentioned, looking at decommissioning, really caught my eye, because our original one said it all, excuse me, all the concrete had to be removed. And it said that now, because typically I think they say that's 4 foot, so now it's at 10 foot, and it said during discussions with Lee County, it became clear this could be highly impractical, as concrete pilings are typically driven dozens of feet down, and removing it from that depth could greatly increase the level of surface level disruption necessary. It is advised that bedrock be the primary standard, as this still ensures that all farmable soil is restored. For Lee County, the minimum depth is 5 feet. And I don't know whether you talked to Brian about that. I thought that was interesting, that if you tried to take it all out, it might do more damage than good. Is that?
I think they should have to take it all out unless they get a waiver. I think it should be the standard.
Oh,
And then if the landowner feels, or whatever, whoever that waiver would come from, feels that deeper would be more of a problem and they're good with it, and so be it, but hold them to a high standard and then allow for flexibility from there.
Is that bedrock, is that, let's say the.
Well, the bedrock would certainly, taking something out of bedrock isn't necessary, because there's, in most places in the county, well, not most places, but a lot of places where we're talking, bedrock is quite a ways down as it is, so, but I just.
So, I guess what I'm trying to get my head around is what it says here. Have you seen this, Brian?
I'm not. I actually was asking, just email Zach to see if he could email it to me.
Could you
Here,
email
I
that to him
have
so he could read that verbiage?
What page is that?
Wi-Fi.
It's on 42, I don't know that, I think we've got the ones with the notes on them. You've got the, just
We got both.
the revisions that were added.
So, Tom, in my notes, I'd already had that down to cross that out. So I think we get to where Brian's talking about it. We go with, so it says all structures, utility lines and equipment associated with CWS, CSES and/or CBES shall be removed with all underground components removed. And then we just put entirely, period, and then the rest of that is just crossed out, it would just end there. I think that gets us there. I mean, it should be removed entirely. And then if somebody wants to apply for a waiver at some point later, I suppose they could do that.
Some areas, though, it's gonna be pretty tough to get all the way down to bedrock, though.
And
Well, yeah, like one of the, so I worked at Camp Dodge for all those years, a training site, and we had units come in from all over the state to do construction work. And we had this unit come in from Massachusetts, and they were all road crew guys, all knew what they were doing. And they went through, so we told them, okay, go ahead, we're gonna do these, just a series of just concrete pads for the museum to display stuff. And we come back at the end of the day, and they had dug down about 20 feet deep, and they were just piling up all the topsoil. And they thought they'd just won the lottery, and we're like, what in the heck are you guys doing? And they were like, well, they wanted to get down to bedrock, and bring in select fill, and they thought they were gonna be able to sell all of this black dirt, and they couldn't believe we had all of this black dirt. I mean, they were 20 feet down and still
Right.
going. I mean, it wasn't, we're not talking bedrock, it was still topsoil. You know, so yeah, I don't know where the bedrock is, but it could be pretty deep.
And my question to Brian was gonna be, is, it sounds, if they go down 20 feet or whatever, when they put these in, they would still be above bedrock?
I don't know exactly how they designed these, and obviously we've talked about being taller and bigger windmills, which leads to a larger footing in
But-
whatever way they design them.
But would they ever remove bedrock?
No,
To-
I mean, to me, to bedrock is certainly all the further, because you're not doing anything farming purpose wise or otherwise into bedrock.
So if it says here that bedrock should be the primary standard, if you were gonna remove them to bedrock, that would basically, essentially be all of it, right?
Yes, that would be. I mean, yeah, I don't,
As far as phrasing that, I don't know, other than we might want something in there that, so somebody doesn't dig a bigger hole than they need.
Well, we could always do it where
Take
it's based on a waiver from the
And
landowners.
the topsoil only goes down how far, Brian?
well, I mean, you can define topsoil all you want, but in the farming world, that top 6 inches to a foot is where all the nutrients are that you're planting into and everything else. Clearly the root systems go down further than that. Every farm's got a different level of topsoil. You know, my farm, for instance, has clay shallower than some of the others, and there's places where you'll follow, just like Trent described, you'll follow black dirt down as far as you can go. So they're all different, and I think the biggest thing is what I said from the beginning was you don't want to let them off easy. I mean, if they're gonna come pour 10 foot of concrete.
And we want
for
10 foot of
footing,
concrete dug
then
out.
why would you only make them take 4 foot out, which is how we started this entire conversation.
Right.
That's, to bedrock, I think is absolutely fine. I'm gonna think in most of these places, unless they're driving piling because of the overall magnitude and size of it, I mean, and again, I don't know what their footing design looks like. Most places, unless they're driving piling, they're not gonna go to bedrock. But again, make them go to bedrock and then allow for a waiver process that, if a landowner doesn't care, I mean, it is their land and so be it. But at least they know up front that unless they can secure something from a landowner, they're gonna take it all back out.
So are you saying the way it's phrased now, you think works?
Yeah, as long as bedrock it says whichever is greater, I'm good with that, yeah.
Is that what you guys'
We would have
intention
to
is?
define bedrock though, in order to keep it clean. I know that it's a common term, but we'd have to put a definition in here.
I'm sure we can come up with a definition in the definition section for bedrock.
Or could just, in absence of that, we could just say, remove all of it.
Yeah, it
Very
just-
equivalent for a waiver, so.
Which you could do that too. Again, there's.
Pretty much what
There's
we've
no
done.
reason to be nice
I
on
think
this.
that's clearer,
What?
if you were to just say, take it all out.
Take it all
That's what
out.
I'm saying.
It's a lot easier than trying to define what
Yeah.
bedrock is. and
That's what I
all
was
that
trying to have Brian.
Which is what
define
I
for me,
wanted
that
from the
paragraph.
beginning was, I mean, I'm good with the
Yeah.
bedrock thing, but take it all out and then allow
Yeah,
flexibility from
It's
there.
easier to understand.
If they added 3 feet, take out all 3 feet. If they added 10, take out all 10. And
Yeah,
then, you know.
I mean, this is where we were at on the first one too.
Yeah, this is where, so as long as we aren't doing damage, if we don't go to bedrock, we shouldn't be doing damage.
Yep.
No, that's
Like I
good.
said, make it rigid and then make them take it all out, and then if they can get a waiver from a landowner or something like that, then so be it. We can still have minimums even on the waivers, but, you know, if the landowner wants to let them leave it flush, the county can still say, no, it's a minimum of
But-
5 feet or something
But,
like that.
but if the owner says we like it there,
That they want to have
big
it on
concrete
or something,
pads.
it's their land,
It is, and then there's a balance there.
yeah. So unless they had a waiver, some sort of waiver or
Yeah.
agreement to,
And I think the waiver should probably be signed by the landowner and possibly by the county also. I guess you guys can think about that, whether you want it signed by both parties, but for sure the landowner.
It's landowner's land.
It is.
And I don't wanna have to sign a waiver that said, another board of supervisors might say no. You know,
You're right.
I don't wanna tell him what he can do with his land.
So just the landowner.
Yeah.
So no
Okay,
subject
so,
to.
so do you wanna then have, you know, cause do we wanna have that waiver then one? Do we wanna have that be then recorded as an impediment? Or do we want to have that be done at the time of decommissioning?
I actually was thinking the same thing. I would think that it'd be nice, and this is getting more in the
Saying
trench
like
area
at the
than
front
mine.
end?
But it would be nice if there was a recorded document for the future.
Yeah.
So if the
abstract of
land
that
were to
property,
sell or
yeah.
something, that it's on
Yeah.
record?
To
Yeah.
acknowledge that structure being there, so if it is 2 foot underground, somebody can know that there's something there.
And if the landowner's, descendants decided they wanted it all out or they wanted it left there, I'm sure if they tell the developer that you only have to take out 4 feet instead of 10, that it won't be hard to reach that agreement.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, the first thing they're gonna do is go to if and when it's ever decommissioned, whatever that might be, they're gonna know exactly what it's gonna cost, and they're gonna go make an offer of some
Sure.
percentage of that to avoid having to do it. I mean,
Sure.
that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, good.
But I do agree that if they're gonna leave anything at all, it wouldn't be bad at all to have some type of recorded document that would follow that property in perpetuity, so that other people in the future know that. I don't know what that looks like, that's kind of, as we're spitballing here, but I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's, it's gotta be one of two ways, either we do it waiverable up front, and then it has to be recorded as an impediment, or we do it waiverable at the time of decommissioning, so that way whoever owns that land
At that time.
at the time of decommissioning would have that option to waive it.
I mean, to me, you're talking decommissioning, to me, the waiver, all of this stuff, I assume we're talking decommissioning. Cause there may not be, if they take it all out, there's nothing to record. I mean, there's no obstruction there, obviously it's different soils because it got stirred up, but to me, that's what I was referencing as decommissioning.
So that's an impediment, it's on the title that there's some sort of
Yes, we get
structure.
your title, opinion, it'll list all the
And structure.
different things, and then it'd have a thing that's.
Shows you how much I know, yeah.
I have a question.
I don't know, that's something I think we should think about and figure out maybe the best way to do that, if it's up front or at the time of decommissioning, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's gotta be one or the other. But
I just wanted to say that in the future, I mean, you're talking like 20, 30 years down the road, somebody may wanna go out in these areas and develop a housing development. And if they're gonna run into concrete that big, that high, they're not gonna be able to put any basements and infrastructure in that area.
And that's kind of why we're talking about the recording aspect, so that if you were purchasing some of this for development or whatever,
You would
as
know.
as long as somebody did their due diligence, they'd be able to find a record that it was there and what it was.
Okay, there needs to be disclosures.
And that would be the recorded document, that here's the location, GPS coordinates combined with some other location that.
It just might affect the future value of that property.
Right.
Alright. You good on that one? I think we got some direction there.
Yep.
Since we're in decommission, I think we were talking about starting there anyway, we just wanna go through some of this, okay. Did you wanna note or I guess I can do it, the next 2 bullets on there? Bullets 2 and 3 about.
Well, that was the one with to the satisfaction of the Board of Supervisors, that we just removed that phrase in there. I don't know if there needs to be more clarification as to what
So-
that standard is, or.
That was
So-
the recommendation
So,
that we got from the attorney before about, don't have that in there,
Yes.
so.
so what I think we should do, so what they put in was something that the company takes pictures and returns it to the condition it was in before, and this, so we go from one arbitrary standard to another, which is just as problematic as the first, right? what I think we should do, the average CSR in Des Moines County is 85. So if we say that it be returned, so if we go to 3, all areas of ground that had been disturbed to construct and operate a CWES, CSES, or CBES shall be graded and reseeded and otherwise restored to, and then you just cross out that, and then just say a CSR rating of 85 or above. And then that will,
But if you've got ground that's 65 or 75, I don't know that you can restore that to 85. I think, because I think there's all sorts of weather, I don't know, that rather than just the condition of that soil, I think there's a lot, I don't think you can
So I think if we did that,
remake it to
it's
one.
probably, I get where you're getting at, cause you need a standard.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to get it back to the whatever CSR it was, if you're gonna use that as a measurable. I don't think, like you're saying, I don't think you can
If it's
set
75,
the
I don't
average,
think you
cause
can.
what if it was 45
Yeah,
or
what if it was
something?
45, you're gonna
Whatever.
get it to
I don't know,
85.
yeah. So I think it'd have to be what the CSR of that
Particular.
land was, parcel. Even then, it may vary within that parcel too, so I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but
Brian, you're
I
probably.
get what you're getting at though.
yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be, some arbitrary standard, at least lets us be an arbitrary standard in our favor instead of somebody else's favor, right? But a CSR gets us there, and it could be, yeah.
Yeah, the original, I like that better. When they've got, and if you look at assessor information, it'll say if you've got a 40-acre field, it'll say so many acres are CSR this and so many acres are CSR that. And I don't know how far they break it down, whether it's to the acre or to the 5 acres or
It's
something
by
like that.
soil type, there's soil maps for the county.
Or
and
anyway, so they can
CSR
tell
for
exactly
soil type.
where that base went in, that it was CSR 85 or CSR 65 or whatever it might be.
They
So,
can get
yeah,
awfully close.
I like getting it back to to restoring it to the original CSR.
We could always require somewhere in the permitting process for that CSR of that site to be noted for each individual spot, so that there's a starting,
Yeah.
a starting number there, that it's not being made up in 30 years.
Right on.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause
And that's fair, that's something that would be possible.
Yeah, because otherwise, if it's us deciding or them deciding, either way arbitrarily, it's the same, well, it's not the same thing. But as far as legally, either one would get us into a courtroom, right? This would be.
I don't know if this would happen, but let's say it's not on, maybe it's adjacent to like a farm field or something, but it's where it was partially wooded or,
Mhm.
something where there's maybe not recorded CSR value.
Oh, they're
Well,
still recorded.
no,
It's all
you
there.
can do
It's back
CSR
to
map,
soils.
yeah.
It'll do it no matter what.
You're gonna go, you're driving around, you find a rolling pasture, it's probably a lower CSR, and that's probably why a lot of times you see pasture. So it's gonna, CSR for now it's gonna be fine no matter where they're at.
Okay. I just wanna make sure it covers everything, not.
Yeah. So when they do average CSR, you'll see a CSR map, and you have this nice square, property, but then it's carved up, and you might have a section that has a creek that's like Tom's talking about, that's CSR 65, and another section that's CSR 87, 88, and then they'll come up with an average CSR. So normally when you're seeing a farm put up for sale or auction, they're gonna have a tillable CSR, and then they're gonna have a total CSR, but they're both gonna be averages based on that, and, what's that?
That's how you price
Yeah.
farm property.
Yep.
Every parcel's gonna be different anyway, so I mean,
Yes, yeah.
Well, I like restoring it to the original, or the pre-construction or pre-installation CSR.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think the
Absolutely.
intent is, how it's
Put
worded
it
now, I
back
think
like-
is to get it to
put it back
that
the way
way,
it was.
like Trent said, I think we need some kind of measurable.
Put it back the way it was, and
So, I
that's
think
how
that
we
makes sense.
measure it.
Do we know if that's even doable? Where do they get that prime dirt? Like, are we just making up something that's not even possible?
CSRs?
Yeah, where are you
No,
gonna
to-
find this prime dirt to replace these huge dugout?
They'll have to buy it.
Do they say what they take?
Literally, I mean, where would that come
Oh,
from?
people sell dirt all the time.
That much?
Is it mouth
Sure,
salt?
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
can they just save what they took out somewhere? On their land?
I mean, I guess they could do a number of things, that probably depends on the agreement with the landowner, I honestly, I don't know.
Let's get back,
What does it say?
if we're gonna do that, we put that in.
No, I think that makes sense, yep, I think we got that.
Okay, so let's move on to something else.
Jim, I think we got a question back here.
If the coordinates of the placement of each turbine is known at the time of the permitting process, why could the CSR amount for that coordinate be included in the permitting?
I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Just what they said.
Yep.
All right, sorry. You guys jump around.
Hey, Rose.
Sorry.
I'm on it.
I think that's exactly what she
All right.
Let's see.
Might be a good investment to buy that dirt they dig out, Brian. Stockpile on their
Yeah,
farm.
maybe the county just takes it all and saves it for later. Bullet number 5 there. That was based on some of the discussion, I don't know if it was the last work session, one of these work sessions where we talked about having a time, basically a time frame or a time limit for, once we define as abandoned and you're gonna decommission it, there wasn't a set time period, so now that statement is to take care of that, so it shall not exceed 365 days.
Yeah, if they can put it up that fast, they can take it down that fast.
Yes, so, that's what that statement being
Right
added is
on.
to cover.
And then that's referenced several more times in that section where the decommissioning plan has to specify what the length of time for that activity would be. That's number 6 on page 43. And then it's also referenced in the abandonment section, G at the end. So it's 3 times in that section, and it all has that same year standard.
So this is an area that reemphasizes, the county engineer in me, that reemphasizes the need for the road agreement, because, if they're under the gun, you say you can build it in this time period, and you can take it down that time, well, if you start looking at the way our gravel roads are, and if they're under the gun to do stuff, and they've got to haul heavy loads out on and off the entire year, you get the springtime, and you get the fall, and the roads are soft, that kind of a thing, so that just, can you put a rigid time frame, and then you land in a year where maybe you're wet a lot longer than you expect, or it's a harder winter, and you've got frost boils, and no matter how good your road agreement is, it doesn't mean the roads are gonna stand up, period. I mean, yes, you can get them back into shape when the conditions come along right. I guess I'm all for hard time frames, but this might be a spot where I would like some discretion to come back to at least to the engineer's office, because we've had years where for 3 months, the roads were borderline impassable in the rural areas, and for this kind of loading, impassable. I mean, there's been farms that couldn't haul grain out we're talking about something that doesn't take into account the fact that Mother Nature gets a big say in what they can actually do as far as moving it and keep the roads usable for the general public, at the same time.
So,
I don't know how to do it, but I feel like we need to allow for some discretion on the county's part, not the contractor's part, to pause things if the road conditions would require.
how much discretion are we talking, so?
I'm telling you that I couldn't tell you, I can't tell you what next spring's gonna be like. All I'm gonna tell you is, doesn't matter how good your language is in a policy, to say the road's gotta be put back into place, the school bus has gotta run. There's just stuff that has to happen. And if you get a hard spring, sometimes November through June suck. It can be a reality. It has been a reality. So I'm not looking to shrink it, I wanna hold it, but we need to have the flexibility to say, no, get out of here, come back, you're destroying things faster than we can keep people on them.
And how do we word that? Because I hear exactly what you're saying, because ultimately, we want the road right back to the way it was before everybody came, before they came in, and, I'm saying, ultimately, how do you,
And just put in unless otherwise agreed to by a majority of the Board of Supervisors.
Well, let's put
I mean,
it
I
back where the
can,
engineer.
I can come up with language, that doesn't concern me. I guess all I'm saying is that a road agreement doesn't necessarily save you if the roads can't be saved. And at that point, you're just trying to keep traffic moving, and you don't really care, even though everybody wants it torn down at that point and everything else, they also wanna be able to get to
right on.
work, they want buses to get their kids
Right.
picked up, and it's not necessarily worst case scenario, but it's a factor.
We do need to have that put in there, or with the discretion of the county engineer.
Yeah, for
the
construction also.
extension of the 365 days. If they lost 20 days here, we can add that back on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can come up with something where it gives, whether it be the board or whether it be the county engineer with agreement of the board, the right to pause the demolition activities due to unforeseen something or other. We can come up with something.
I don't think any of us three guys up here knows about them roads, how they're gonna hold up.
Well, if you want the board to be, my point is,
Yeah.
if you want the board, obviously, I would hope the board would listen to the engineer. If he said this is a nightmare, we need to pause this, that the board would go with it. So however you want it, I just think we need to have some flexibility.
The reason I wanted to say with majority of the board, Jim, is because when you look at some of these cases from other jurisdictions, it's very clear to me that some of these companies, I don't know if it's this one or the one that's currently looking in the area, but some of these companies in the past have used the fact that it's not the supervisors, that it's subordinate boards or it's subordinate entities, to say that if they're not, that they're meeting the minimum requirements, and that in wrongful denial, they're just trying to beat counties over the head with that, or just government entities as a rule. And so if we have the actual decision come back to you guys, then you have home rule authority, and they can't do that. So I'm sure you're gonna listen to whatever Brian says and take that into account, but we're in a much better stead if it's by approval of the Board of Supervisors.
I'm hoping it's not Brian.
Hey, if only we can go back and sue Brian, then I'm all for putting his name down there. But yeah, I
The
hear what
timelines we're talking,
you're
I'm not gonna be here either, so.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I think we kinda get the general gist. It may
Yeah.
take some time to
get it back
tweak
right.
the language a little bit, but I think we get the general idea of what the intent is.
I don't
so.
have any problem with that.
I would propose that should also go with the construction phase.
Can you give us your name? We know
Yes,
who you are.
Allison Moore. I think it's important that the engineers should have some say during the construction phase as well as the decommissioning in case we would run into weather conditions like he's describing during construction too.
And it actually, it's funny you say that, so maybe it handles in the road use agreement, but that would be part of whatever road use agreement we would put together for the front end of this whole thing.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely would be the right to pause activities depending on road conditions.
Probably need to
So-
reread it, but I think that would be covered.
But you're right,
the
you're
front
spot
end of
on.
it. I think, yeah, we can double check that, make sure it's.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan Drew, does it make more sense just to have in there that the roads are gonna be passable at all times and cover it that way? I mean, I could never imagine anybody that's been in a contractor having an engineer say, oh, you're done today. I mean, the liability of mowing off the job for who knows how long, I mean, if you just put in there, you leave it to the contractor to decide, hey, are we gonna have soil stabilizer, are we gonna have to spend $20,000 on rock? As long as the roads are always passable, that's all the citizens should care about, right? I mean, we want roads to be able to, other people to use them because they're living there. As long as that's provided through the duration of construction, decommissioning, anytime, that's all should matter, right? I mean, I just couldn't imagine having an arbitrary person come in and say, you got, your company's shut down, I can't tell you when you're returning. I mean, to me, if I was a contractor, I'd say, well, and Brian knows this, I mean, anytime you kick somebody off a job, at your discretion, you're getting back charged for a mob or whatever the case is a lot of times. So I just, why wouldn't we just make it, the roads have always gotta be in the road agreement? I mean, that's what the expectation is, that the roads are always gonna be passable. There's a lot of ways that contractors can achieve that, whether it's soil stabilization, whatever the case is.
They're not always passable anyway, though.
We'll put it on the contractor, make sure they are.
But they're
If they wanna
not.
build their
Without this
project-
project going in, they're not even always
They
passable.
could go in there and put cement in the road and
No.
it'll be, yeah, they do it
I'm
in
saying
Illinois all
there's
the
county
time.
roads that aren't always passable from day to day, so who's to
And
say?
again, if the contractor wants to go in during that season, they can soil, cement, stabilize the roads and make them hard as concrete. Put it on the contractor. You wanna come in that time of year, make our roads better. They did it over in Illinois on the Bishop Hill Wind Farm, and now there's, all the citizens have basically a cement road with a seal coat surface on it.
I'm willing to let Brian make.
I'll jump in the middle of this.
Yeah.
I think they both have good points. They really do. Ryan's not wrong. When you kick somebody out of the site, there's a mow, and Allison's absolutely right. It's just one of those things where I don't think you're necessarily talking months and months kicked out, but it may be, okay, you gotta stabilize this road if you wanna keep going, and so there's a pause to do that. We'll have the right to say that in our process, in our road agreement, whatever it is. So I think there's some middle ground here where they can both be accommodated, because most contractors aren't gonna just come in and drop X amount per mile just to try to avoid the chance. They're not gonna do it unless they absolutely have to, as far as stabilization or something like that. But Ryan's right, there are ways to stabilize roads, and I agree that there's a chance that these roads could absolutely come, I said this before actually, that these roads could come out better, and as far as I'm concerned, should come out better than when we started if we do this properly. I would think that's just something that we should be held to and try to achieve, so. I'm not so much, I talked about months and months and months, I'm not so much talking about that kind of a delay as much as, all right, you were working all winter, frost is starting to come out, it's not a condition, with frost partially in, partially out, you can't necessarily go stabilize something, but they're not, so there's a middle ground in there of something. We can absolutely come up with some language. I never really envisioned kicking anybody out for months, but to accommodate a situation and then get back to it kind of a thing.
But it should not cost the taxpayers
Not a penny.
what they're tearing up.
Not a penny.
Not a penny, you're right.
Yeah.
I think anything in this ordinance when it comes to timelines, that's important to be careful in terms of extenuating circumstances. So there are already instances during the permitting process, for instance, where it talks about the time in between the submittal of an application and the final vote, or the time it proceeds to the final review. And so that there's already instances here that refer to the board being able to grant an extension if needed. So that's the important thing, is to have those bare minimum timelines, but have some discretion there that under extenuating circumstances, that there could be some flexibility. So I think that's the same thing we're talking about here. It's gonna be similar to that.
Yeah, and there will be, so.
Are the, an individual turbine that would be damaged by hail, fire, windstorm, lightning, whatever it might be, is the removal of that covered in the decommissioning?
Well, we have this, so that's addressed twice. Well, there's the abandonment, which is just not necessarily due to damage, just it's not functional. But in the section, it's Article 12 on emergency response. There is a section, the last section D, response to damaged property. And
What page you on, Jerry?
Page 40. Oh, it's on the second page of that article, but it's section D, response to damaged property. And then so if it's basically damaged, but it's not impacting the surrounding property, it's not operational as a result of that, that's within 365 days.
If it's not impacting the surrounding property, is that?
What, if it becomes if the equipment becomes inoperative while otherwise structurally sound, so it says shall either repair or reactivate them or initiate decommissioning. And then if the emergency caused any portion of the equipment to physically collapse or cause damage to private property, or be at imminent risk of that, the owner shall promptly remove the damaged components and restore the property to pre-damage condition within 365 days.
I don't like 365 days. That's the deal. I went to Mechanicsville, and a big part of the problem up there were they were in the air for months, and I'd mentioned liquidated damages. I explored, they take these things down, they take down a lot of these things with explosives. They'll have a little blow up on it and they fall down like a pole. And anyway, and they can drop them anywhere they want, to the north, south, whatever, on participating property. Well, then it's down out of the ground, so you're not blowing fiberglass. And they can cut it apart, and they use smaller equipment, which saves them a bunch of money. Because if you pull a 600-ton crane out there to drive around to take down turbines, you're gonna do as much damage, way more damage than having those things fall back on participating property. But I would like to see, and I don't have a number in mind, but if they have it damaged when, however you phrase it, that's causing damage or harm to surrounding property or adjacent property, what it got there, I'd like it taken down in a lot shorter period of time. And I would like to see liquidated damages, and for those of you who don't know what liquidated damages, I was a construction contractor, and some contractors, the contracts will say, if you aren't done by March 15th, it costs you $10,000 a day until you do fix it. They, and we would have to talk about a number, and probably the number of days, but it would be a lot faster, I'm sure, rather than trying to, we talked about it when we were up in Mechanicsville, how long it would take to find those cranes and mobilize everything on site and put them together and take that thing down. The expense and just the time it would take, I can't imagine getting something like that done and on site in 6 to 8 weeks would be light speed.
So,
there is a subsection here, I'm sorry, under section 2, if you go to subsection C, which is on page 41, where it says, so the first statement, number 2, specifically refers to the restoration of the property within a year. But it also says, in any instance where removal and restoration efforts have not commenced within 90 days of the event, the county may initiate using funds from, or we could specify what the liquidated damages, or however you want to put it, but essentially 90 days to get started, a year to fully restore.
I don't like the year to fully restore.
I don't like the 90 days. I don't think there's any, if you were gonna blow one of those over, that you would have to contact a company that does that, say, how soon can you mobilize a team here to take this down? And then you can bring in smaller equipment, cut it apart on the ground, haul it away so that it's not waving in the air for 6 months.
so when we talk about liquidated damages, obviously that's normally in a contract context, right? With this being an ordinance, we don't necessarily have a contract with any of these people, right, as a county. So then I think it falls on our ability to enforce. So.
Penalties in there
the-
already.
Right, we have penalties already in there and we're capped at $1,000 a day.
I'm somewhat familiar with liquidated damages, and they aren't enforceable if they're a penalty.
Say that again, Tom?
It's not enforced if you used it as a penalty. It's like, that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
I'm gonna cause you pain. But if there is damage that will cause to the county or other owners that, you know, that there is a rational reason to have something like that, they are enforceable. And I do not know about the difference between an ordinance and a contract. And I'm not just, but liquidated damages tend to, Brian can tell you, it tends to focus your mind on a schedule. If it has to be done in 30 days or something like that, you focus on it, but if it doesn't have to be done for 90 days, we'll squeeze it in when we get a chance.
It sets the time frame for what, they'll backdate their work to whatever, so they can avoid paying the damage.
Yes. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I've seen it enforced times. If you don't meet
I love the idea.
the owners.
I'm not sure we can, I think we might have to do it as penalties within our.
And that's what I had mentioned to you before,
Yeah,
that
I
I don't
think-
know, I was gonna have this conversation with Trent at some point. I don't know if we can do liquidated damages, but there is a penalty, so if they're not meeting the requirements of the ordinance, then we can penalize them up to $1,000 a day,
You could,
every day.
And that refers to any kind of violation.
but I know they've seen them thrown out
Yeah.
liquidated damages if it's used as, if it's a penalty.
Now, one thing I did put into, as we get further into the abandonment thing, is I think I put in there that any 3 violations of this ordinance in a 5-year period shall be considered abandonment of the entire permit and shall require immediate decommissioning. I think that that's a way that we can cover it, because I've kind of, you know, when we're looking at, you know, billion-dollar projects, having only the authority to, we have the authority to permit, give a permit, pull a permit, right, we can do that. As long as we're following our code, once we've got a permit issued. So if we put it in here that after so many violations, and 3, it's baseball season, softball season, right, 3 strikes, you're out, but I think that's really our ability, is if we pull that permit, you know, that's really our response. We have the ability to do that. We can pull the permit as long as we put it into our ordinance up front. And that's one way we can do that. And I don't know if it's 3 violations in 5 years or if it's 5 violations in 5 years. That's up to you guys, but I think that's one way we can get to that point.
That might be that point, but if you've got one, it would only take 1 violation where one of those blades is hanging in the air for 6 months, because that's what they've got up there.
Can I clarify something real quick, just make
Sure.
sure, I always wanna make, so if we're talking about something that is either at its end of its useful life, or just for some reason it's broken, it can't be operable, the 365-day window
That
is
doesn't-
okay,
that doesn't
but if
bother me.
if it's damaged in some
damaged,
manner, you know,
if it's-
one of the
if
blades
it's
is
damaged.
broken or whatever, I don't know what had happened, but, and that's the case where then we wanna I just wanna make sure I'm
Yeah, and-
clarifying those two
And I think
differences.
Jared
Okay.
mentioned that's in there, if it's, you know, damaging, adjacent property or something like that,
Yep.
that
Okay.
needs to come down.
I just wanna make sure I'm
I think
clear
we can
on
do
the
this.
separation,
Yeah,
on the separation.
If the bearings wear out on it or something like
Yep.
that, and it's not turning anymore, that isn't,
Yep, I just wanted to clarify that
Okay.
as
At
we're
least
talking,
that
just
you
make
got
sure
problems.
I'm on the same page.
Basically stabilize it so that it's not an imminent risk to.
But then if it is damaged, then you wanna shrink that period down.
well, like I said, I don't like 90 days.
Right,
on it.
to like,
I like to
what?
take
I
it
don't know
down.
what that is, but-
I'm not sure, well, I think you can take it down, I don't think, if they take it down, you know, just topple it, I can't imagine it would take that long to get a team there, blow it down, and then once it's on the ground, they can cut it apart with smaller equipment. Does that make sense to you, Brian?
Oh, absolutely,
Are
after
they
seeing
from a
mechanics
customer?
will, I think it needs to be on the ground, we need to lean on it to get it onto the ground as fast as possible.
Anyway,
That
I'd
was a
just
big
like,
part of the
because
problem
that's, we were, like I said, up at Mechanicsville, and that's the deal up there, is they have one of those blades just hanging in the air.
Do you have
and
thoughts
the
on
wind
what those
blowing
timeframe, you want
stuff.
those timeframes to be?
Well, I want less than 90 days.
Yeah, no doubt.
I
no doubt.
How long
And
does
less
it
than
take to get
365.
through in there?
I can't imagine
Well,
that they
it's-
couldn't get that done in 30 days.
30
Max,
days
man.
would be,
Yeah. I say my only concern, I guess I don't even know if it's a concern, I guess we put in there what you want. I was thinking on their perspective, they're probably gonna have to deal with an insurance company or something, and who knows how long that's gonna take them, but that's, I guess that's their problem and not our problem, so.
They'll have it insured, I'm sure, so if something happens, or I would assume they would, but
30 days.
And unless, somebody's got a reason that it's not possible to do it and that, but I truly
And
can't
then
imagine that
instead
you
of-
can't contact one of those, a company, or maybe even have people on staff that
Yeah, just get
that
up there
can
and tip that
install,
thing and-
an explosive charge down at the base of that thing, and it goes over and it's on the ground, and it's not blowing all over anymore.
So 30 days, and then on the length, we had 365.
It was, yeah,
You
it
want-
was a
so
little
what
bit
do you-
longer
Well, and I
than
get,
the 30 days.
That would be to fully restore.
fully-
fully restore,
fully restored.
yeah.
Did you wanna shorten that period too, or you?
Well, I want it removed once it's down. I don't
Or we
want
could, or we
that.
could split it into a couple of different categories, 30 days to
Well,
get started, 6 months to have the
If-
tower
if-
down.
If I knew how to write
365
this,
to
I'd have read it
restore
for you.
or
That's-
something.
this is-
Well, I'm just trying to
No,
understand
I'm not being
what
sorry,
you're-
I'm
what
just
you're
saying,
looking for.
this is what, and Brian saw it, this was the deal, is we need that on the ground and then cut up. And I don't think, and once it's on the ground, I don't think it'll take an act of Congress to cut it up, because you don't need a 500-ton crane. You can bring in smaller equipment, you can cut it apart with, and then get
Well, and-
completely off.
I agree with you, that's
And
definitely.
we don't have to get into the, don't, we
No,
don't
we don't
get
have to tell
into
them how
the
to do it.
details of how they do it, we just
No,
gotta
I
give them
agree.
a time frame.
We just
Well,
want,
and that's what I'm getting
We
at.
just want
That's what
30
I want.
days, 30 days.
Yep.
I
we
mean,
just want it
that's-
gone.
Wow.
That's, we don't have
I
to.
think that's pushing it.
I also wanna say it might be more than just the turbine you want gone, cause I saw in Mechanicsville, they had the crane sitting there for sale.
Well, the thing about those cranes is, and Ryan would know, you don't just move a 500 or 600-ton crane when you're tired of it. You take it someplace where it's needed next.
Well, that one was
It's
sitting
gonna
there
cost
for sale.
a
Can you
whole lot of
imagine
money.
one of
Well,
those
then
things?
Rarely to sell it.
Somebody went out
At
and
the
broke, yeah.
site.
Yeah, so, and I don't, I think they use explosive to take a lot of them down. There's videos you can get that where they take down whole installations. I mean, they just, they don't have to mobilize those cranes, they don't have to take care of the roads near as much. But yeah, I think you can, if, just thinking out loud, I would assume that those demolition companies are pretty used to, say, hey, what are you doing tomorrow?
Blowing something
If
up.
you're gonna do that, that they can mobilize and get there and then,
So you're looking at 30 days to get it
get it down
from
and
a
out.
vertical position, and 90 days to have it completely removed?
I'd like to see it out, down and out in 30 days.
Whole thing in 30?
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
don't,
That's
I
it.
don't think that's I truly don't think that's a hardship on that company, because they don't have to bring in one of those cranes, so they don't have to do that. Whatever they're mobilizing, they can mobilize it easier, and it's cheaper than taking it down.
I don't think it matters if it's a hardship.
Well, I agree, I'm just saying, I don't think
that's it.
30 days is a hardship. That just
So
focuses
clarify
your attention.
something though, so 30 days, that's basically to get the tower down and gone, but then,
Cut 'em.
do we wanna give them more, cause then it did say to restore the land to full.
Well, I.
Same thing we were talking about earlier, the pre-conditions.
is a push.
I don't
Do
think
you wanna
can-
leave
I
that
don't-
at a
I don't
longer
think it-
timeframe, or?
I think that would probably be an
it's-
installation thing. I don't know that you wanna go in and restore a 5 acre, or try to restore it, that'd be a,
Well, that depends on the season, and that's no way to know that,
Yeah.
ahead of time.
So I'm just clarifying, the concern you have on the timeframe is just getting the tower down and gone, and
The
not necessarily
damaged
the-
tower,
the full
blades
restoration
out.
of it, and that could have a longer timeframe.
yeah, the restoration could happen.
Okay,
yeah.
I just wanna clarify the two.
You know, not
the
knowing
two
much
different
about
steps.
these windmill farms and that, if that does give up on that head up there, the motor and everything, what's the chances of them going up and then putting a new head on top of that tower?
Do it all the time.
Like, they do it
Yeah,
all
let's see
the
if they
time.
replace them.
Depends how it's
So-
damaged.
So we might be getting into the thing there where they, on that 30 days, you know, where they might wanna put that back up.
Well, and that's, I was just gonna say something real quick. A lot of times when you see them detonate and blow them up, that's on repowers. They're outdated, so they're just getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if one of these got damaged by a tornado, chances are they're not gonna abandon the windmill. They're gonna replace it with a new functioning one, so it wouldn't be, you know, just scrapping it out, tearing the base out. I mean, they're gonna wanna put one back in there if they've got a functioning wind farm, so it's a little bit, in my mind, different, but.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, that, you know,
Well, if they're gonna replace it, they'd have to put a new one in. We just can't have something like they've got Mechanicsville standing
well,
up there.
the tower, they wouldn't have to put a new tower in.
Well, you're cutting the tower down. You're just like you chop a tree down.
I understand that.
He's
but-
saying maybe a blade is damaged and they just wanna come in and put a new blade on it.
30 days.
And if they can do that in that time, like, I don't care, but I don't think, by the time they bring equipment in to do that, I don't know. We just can't have that.
I think we gotta, again, I think we got at least some general guidance here, we can rework it.
And maybe
See what we
they
come
can
up
just-
with if you like
Maybe
that.
they can drop a blade or a nacelle or something and replace that, I
Yeah.
don't know. But, to end any property damage that's happening.
Okay, so do we wanna go back to that decommissioning plan then?
Yeah, I think. See if we get through that whole section.
The nacelle. When they put the tower up, and then put it in all those other sections. And then they put the nacelle on the blades. I don't remember if we're just gonna drop it. We're gonna have a crane there.
Where you at, T?
So the next thing I had as far as anything, if we look at C4.
What are we blowing up? Oh, my bad.
Turbine.
No, so we have decommissioning plan submission requirements, right? So C4 has documentation of the existing
Oh, yeah.
conditions prior to establishing.
It already has
CPS.
CSI in there, come on.
Yeah, so I think CSC best for county to use baseline reference. I just think we take that whole, you know, to just go, take that part after C-best out and use the period. And then shall include aerial ground specific CSR, which we've already got in there. So I just think we take out that last clause that says for the county to use as a baseline reference in determining whether the land has been restored to its pre-development condition during decommissioning. I think we just take that whole last clause out. It doesn't help us at all. So just
What
say.
are you taking out again, Trent? Can you?
So after that, so you have C-best, C-BESS.
Yeah.
Instead of having a comma, just have a period, and that's it, and then
Oh.
you roll into ABC.
Okay.
So we just take that entire last clause out.
Which page you on? 43.
43?
Okay.
And think that is in there just to say why we're asking for that information, but yeah, it doesn't have to be in there.
Right, yeah, it doesn't help us, yeah. And then if we get down to the bottom of the page, there, D, for cost estimate, and then again, this is just cleanup, language cleanup thing. So that final clause, so you have the following requirements shall apply to the cost estimate supplied by the developer. And then instead of saying as stipulated in section C5, this article, because this isn't a contract, this is an ordinance, right? So it's not stipulated. So in accordance with C5 of this article, just change that to in accordance with.
Trying to go through that again, you're removing the clause, the last clause from section 4, before A, B, and C.
Yes, correct, yeah.
She uses a baseline reference, and then you're taking out in determining whether the land is being stored.
Yes. Well, we don't need to say why it's required, right? We just, the fact that it's required, it's required.
Okay.
But it then, and those other things do talk about, and Jared hit on it too, what we're talking about already is having that CSR and trying to use that as an established.
I don't have a problem with that.
I have a question on C, number 7 on page 43.
Mhm.
A statement that the owner and or operator shall notify the county at least 365 days in advance of the planned decommissioning. In this case, is the owner the property owner, or is the owner of the windmill, or?
Yeah, we kind of went through this.
That's in the definition.
It's in the definition, so that's a good question.
Okay,
I appreciate that you caught that.
so then they have to wait 365 days to take it down?
Well, it says within 360, they don't have to wait.
But they have up to.
It says they have to notify the county at least 365 days in advance.
Just wanna clarify, so this section is about when they submit their permit, they have to put together a decommissioning plan. So this is just saying that they basically have to provide a letter that's saying they're committed to notifying the county 365 days before they're gonna do decommissioning.
Why do we require that much time?
Why not require?
A whole year?
They gotta know a year
To
ahead of time.
notify
It's giving the county a year in advance
the
so they
county
can
in
prepare for
advance.
it.
They have to take it down.
That's the planned decommissioning of the whole
Of the whole,
facility.
yeah.
It feels like it's adding time, but it's really not. It's more so that.
It's a notice,
It
yeah.
doesn't change their schedule.
It's a notification that they're gonna,
And there's certain things that have to happen, because you'll get another road use agreement
Yeah.
on the decommissioning process, and there's some things that go
So
on during that
any of them
time.
that are damaged will have to come down in that shorter time period, they don't have to.
That's a
Yeah, damage.
That's a different thing.
yeah, that's a different thing, yep.
Okay, and then. Oh, then at 2 on page 45, I had added in cost of returning to land, I had CSR 85 or above, but it was saying to establish CSR.
Excuse me.
Where are you at, Trent?
You talk
Yeah.
faster than I can turn pages.
Sure, no, I've already got my notes on.
Your
So,
which page?
Page 44, number 2. So it says, the cost estimate shall encompass all costs associated with decommissioning the C-West, C-Cess, or C-S, including the deconstruction, transportation, disposal of equipment, as well as site cleanup, comma, and cost of returning the land to the established CSR. Because I think it's implied from other parts, but we want to make sure that it's expressed, that it's stated there.
Yeah, we'd had that statement about the CSR in there previously, but as we discussed earlier, since if we are making that the focal point, I agree.
Okay, and then for 4, I just have a question mark and amount. So they're saying cost estimate shall also include cost of providing liability insurance coverage to the county in the event developer's liability insurance coverage lapses. So I think we should say, in addition to, instead of if it lapses, but do we want to establish an amount for that insurance? Do we?
Well, we need.
Jared and I discussed that a little bit, but we're like, we have no idea what that should be.
Reword that a little bit
Yeah.
anyway, because it isn't, they don't need to insure the county. We're covered by Iowa code. But we want all the rest, any non-participating property in the county, you know, has a bodily injury, property damage. However, we phrase that, and we want the insurance company, they would provide the county with a copy of their, of that liability coverage. And the liability company would notify us 60 days or 90 days before that coverage lapses, and then notify us, I don't know, if that coverage lapses, and then that would call in to that cost estimate, that surety bond, to get that insurance. They'll send certificates of insurance, any insurance company will do that, so that the county would, instead it runs from January 1st to December 31st, such and such a year, however that is. And then that would be part of that, the insurance company would give us 60 or 90 days notice that the policy, the premium's gonna be due in 60 or 90 days. And if it's not paid, it lapses, and then let us know if that isn't paid. So that we draw on that surety bond to pay that premium.
Okay, I
Does
think.
that make sense?
It does. Are you tracking that, Zach, what he's saying?
Is that a set time, though? Is that 60 or 90 days? I mean, what, you know?
Well, and it doesn't make any matter, except that the county wants to know that insurance is still in force. That perhaps a developer is not paying, didn't pay that insurance, and, you know, everybody, you know, I heard the guy that gets run into his car and the other guy's insurance lapsed a week ago. He doesn't have any insurance.
Sure.
We don't want that to happen. We want that insurance company to correspond with us, the status of that policy, and said, you know, that policy will expire on December 31st, 2020.
Insurance companies will do that, because I had to do that when I was on the road for Procter & Gamble. I had to list them as an insured on my policy.
Additional insured. Yep.
Additional insured, so, and they notify who's
Yeah.
doing it.
I don't,
Right, yeah, so we put in addition to.
I don't think that they can list us as an additional insured, because we're not covered. All the non-participating landowners are covered, but they can't cover the county. That's, because if if something would happen, then they would have to, that insurance company would have to provide the county with legal representation, when we don't need legal representation, because we would not be at fault. Am I making sense?
Well, yeah,
Way
yeah.
that it was explained, that the attorney explained it, so we don't need to have the county covered, but we wanna make sure it covers all. Maybe somebody here knows, are participating landowners, I'm assuming there's some sort, does the developer provide insurance for them? Or does anybody know? That might be interesting to find out.
Yeah, so do we know, like, so you're talking about the Mechanicsville incident, do we know what the liability was on that? Do we, I mean, cause that's ultimately whether it's in addition or not, cause if it's in addition to us, it shouldn't cost them much more, cause you're right. You know, we don't have liability, but it's just, it's kind of a procedural thing. So either way, that's fine. But the amount is what's gonna really make a difference.
Liability insurance.
Yeah, and like, so your car, and I don't know what it is exactly now, but it used to be that you had to have $100,000 worth of liability insurance. It's probably more now, but, so my question is, what is that amount? And do we have someplace where they've had liabilities that we can use to find that number?
The landowner's suing, does anybody here know what they're suing that?
The manufacturer, I believe.
But is there an amount? Would they say a couple hundred or 150 acres, whatever it was, you know, and so they're suing them. And I know I've seen the newspaper article, but I don't remember if there was an amount. That might be interesting to see, just for comparison. I had a steel erection company, nowhere near worth $400 million or something like that. And it was regularly, I would be required to carry, I'd have a $2 or $3 million underlying liability coverage, and then I'd have to have a $10 million umbrella on top of that, so I would have just per occurrence, so that I would have that that 12 or 13 million dollars available if something happened, and we want it to be per occurrence. That I'll see if I can. I will try to look that up. I'll try to come up with a better number.
Yeah, I think we want a number
Yeah.
and something from some incident, something somewhere that we can say we looked at to rely on that number for what that liability is.
And I think that's something we kinda knew, there should be a number there, but we just,
Yeah.
we were like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I don't
What
think
to put in
so,
there.
but we need to do that. Okay. All right, so let's circle that. Okay, then, oh, I have it defined, okay. So I have down E1, prior to the approval of citing permit, C-West, C-West, C-West. Oh, yeah, so we're talking about here, financial security. We have the board of supervisors with the surety bond, and then we say, or another acceptable form. So then somewhere we have to define what is another acceptable form to make sure, you know.
I like.
Well, it was initially, it used the phrase, or another form deemed acceptable by the board, and that was another one of those
Yeah.
ambiguous things.
I like surety bonds for two reasons, you know, besides the coverage. If a bonding company is going to insure somebody, we don't have to worry about the financial status of that company. Cause that financial security will go through them from top to bottom before they issue, surety bonds for hundreds of millions of dollars.
So
That's,
So, do you just wanna leave it as a surety bond? or-
I suppose you could put escrow, but, I can't imagine anybody wanted to put
That's a
up
lot
that.
of money to.
That's a lot of money to hear,
Set an
you hold
account.
this for me.
And I don't think
I mean,
Sarah
I
wants
suppose
to hold that
if you
much
wanna
money.
let them do it, you
You
could, I would.
you could, and the thing about escrow is, you would have rules for that, same as for the surety bond. You can't just say, well, we didn't like something you did, we're gonna pull $100,000 or $1 million. It'll have rules on that too.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Surety bond.
So just surety bond.
Surety
I
bond.
like surety bond.
Found the article, at least an article about it, and it said that the company tried to pay the farmer off with $230,000 and he wouldn't accept and is suing, so.
$230,000.
That was they tried to offer,
Oh, that's what they tried to offer.
yeah, or they wrote him a check and he wouldn't take it or something to that effect. That's the only number financially that's mentioned in the article.
Okay, thank you.
And in that case, that particular facility was not a full-scale wind farm, it was just those two
Just
turbines,
those
so.
two turbines. Okay, I'll try to come up with a number for that too.
Okay. And then for financial security, E2, we wanna do 125%, 150%.
That's where we had
Kinda been
it,
going back
before it
and
was
forth.
3 times.
3 times.
Yeah.
And then from the guidance from the attorney, it should be less.
Yeah, I said.
I don't remember if he
can't
said what,
defend-
we had
you can't
125.
defend
The county was 150,
I would be.
whatever you guys
I
wanted
would
to be, honestly.
125 or 150. I'm familiar enough with that, you know, there's always unforeseen, items. Lee County's at 150.
Yeah.
I'd rather go
I like
150 than
I think
take in
Okay.
inflation.
Well, and the estimate will cover, I mean, if you get anybody, you tell him to cover 3 years of inflation, they can include that, but there's always something that. I'm cool with the 150, but I'm sure there's somebody here that knows better than me, but I
Nope,
like.
that's fine.
I like 150.
Okay, and then for F1, I have down, tie it back to that CSR rating. Inter-operator shall supply county with documentation of on-site conditions following completion of decommissioning. This shall include aerial and/or ground level photographs, written descriptions, or any other such documentation that the board determines necessary for documenting the condition of the properties involved. And then it goes on to 2, if the supplied document does not meet the minimum standards of this ordinance, section B, the county may conduct its own inspection on the site, either directly or through. So I think we take out, so meet the minimum standard of this ordinance. I think we want to just say, the county may conduct its own inspection of the site, either directly or through the use of third-party consultant, and the owner and operator shall be responsible for compensating the county for these activities. And part of the reason I don't want it tied to the minimum standard is we don't know if it's tied, we don't know if it meets the minimum standard or not unless we go look and see. So it's kind of creates a circular argument where we can never say for sure that, you know.
So what do you propose, just take it, does not meet the standards, or?
Yeah, just take that first clause out.
You're just saying the county may conduct.
And say the county may conduct.
Okay.
And I don't know if we wanna put language in there talking about that new that CSR or not, I think we can.
Okay.
And then for determination of abandonment, which I've already talked about, G, you have any CWS, CSS, or CBES or a portion thereof that has not been in operation for a period of 3 months. 365 consecutive days shall be deemed to be abandoned by the administrator, and notification of this determination shall be submitted to the owner and operator at this time. And I also think we should have any 3 violations of this ordinance in a 5-year period shall be considered abandonment of the entire permit and shall require the entire decommissioning. I think that, and again, I don't know if 3 is the right number, but I think that at some point, if they just habitually violate the ordinance, they forfeit their permit. And I think we wanna have that in there in this abandonment portion.
What was the first comment you just made in that section? I missed that one. Before the,
For G,
yeah.
I just read through what was originally there, and then after that, add on any 3 violations of this ordinance in a 5-year period shall be considered abandonment of the entire permit. And I don't even know if abandonment, I think maybe forfeiture of the entire permit.
So that'd be allowing 3 out of 5 years of no use?
No,
I mean,
no.
3 years?
So part of the reality of this is, and we've run into this, like what you know, sewer stuff, right, with, you know, is we don't have a lot of bite in enforcement other than withdrawing, them forfeiting their permit. And so if we have these habitual violations, then they forfeit their permit. And I think we wanna write that into the ordinance.
Give you a little leverage.
Right, because the permit is really the tool that we have.
The specific, there's the construction, and then there's actual, the lifespan of the project when it's operational. And so the siting permit is specific to the construction of the facilities. I don't know if we can really say that we can forfeit a permit 10 years after a facility is, I mean, we can use different terminology, but it's not really at that point, it's just, it's not part of the siting permit anymore. The siting permit would have already would have already expired after they finished construction.
So,
But the
but
permit,
they
the permit still
operate
permits
with the
them to,
permit.
what do they operate under, the permit or under the ordinance?
Well, they'll be operating under the permit,
Okay,
yeah, so that's what I'm saying is,
So the permit's in effect the whole time that they own the,
correct, yeah.
So
And again, we should not do a siting permit, we're not doing that portion, but it is not in the best interest of the county to do a siting permit, it only hurts us. You know,
what's that, the first permit?
it's like, yeah, it's a permit.
The preliminary.
A preliminary permit or a siting permit, whatever you wanna call that. The initial permit isn't something we want to do.
No, but it's one permit from the preliminary and the final review to construction. That's the full, once they present the preliminary plan, then they make any necessary revisions until that's exactly what they're gonna build, and then the permit covers that construction. So a siting permit refers to, the word siting permit is referring to both phases, the preliminary and final review. That's.
so permit doesn't apply to operation? I mean, if we
Well,
give out a permit to serve beer.
as it
that
stands
means-
right now on page 28, it says validity of approved permits. An approved siting permit shall be valid for 2 years following approval of the board. So it's defined as a siting permit. It's for the purpose of ensuring that the facility as developed meets the minimum setbacks and other standards once it's built. That doesn't mean that the ordinance still addresses the day-to-day enforcement and then the decommissioning at a later date, but that's separate from the initial siting permit. I don't know if it needs to be, again, part of the issue here is that because this is being done outside the context of zoning, there's no countywide zoning ordinance, so so if there were zoning, that would be something that would automatically cover the day-to-day use of the property going forward. But when it's separate from that, again, maybe there needs to be a specific way of defining that in terms of maybe restructure what the permit means, but.
I'm confused,
yeah.
because again, I thought a permit meant,
Well,
it's giving you the permission, permitting you
Yeah.
to build, operate, function, because
What's the first, the siting or conditional permit that says,
And-
okay, the permit, this permit, shows that you've got the proper setbacks, the proper whatever it is. And, if the final permit meets those same standards, in other words, so when the permit gets more detailed or you get further along in the process, if it meets those same requirements, but your conditional permits shows that you're gonna meet those requirements, but you still have to add, I have no idea what it might be.
I mean, I suppose we could do it in that, instead of saying that the entire permit is forfeited.
Well,
Because they're operating under one permit, and that's kind of the thing, is they're operating under
right.
a permit.
Do they get an operational permit?
But we've done it as a siting permit, you're right.
So it's the very first passage in the ordinance under general provisions, first page. The purpose of this ordinance is to establish a set of minimum standards.
Give me your page.
Sorry, page 1, right at the beginning. So that's after the table of contents, obviously. But this is just the general purpose statement that governs the entire ordinance. So the permit structure that's defined is referring to the siting and construction, but the overall ordinance purpose sets that it's a minimum standards for the siting, placement, construction, installation, operation, maintenance, and decommissioning. So it's basically, yeah, so the ordinance, as established, has jurisdiction over the entire process, the entire operation of these facilities, whereas the permitting process, when we look at setbacks and other characteristics of the wind or solar facility, those are conditions that are necessary to define before they're constructed. And once they're constructed, then those standards will be complied with. And then from then on, it's just a matter of there's the day-to-day enforcement in terms of any issues that come up during the lifespan, including damage from a emergency event or the ultimate decommissioning, however that's brought about, whether it be planned decommissioning or.
So, did this start, we're talking about the permit would be revoked?
That's how we first started
Right.
talking about it, so I think
Yeah,
maybe it's maybe just a verbiage that we need to,
What-
maybe it's not a revoking
Just
the
say,
permit,
you know,
but
if
it's-
this happens, you'll be determined to
Yeah.
be in the same, we've got in default of the
the
you know, and
ordinance.
decommissioning,
Yeah.
moving in,
Yeah.
something like that, cause I think we've got that for the bond, if they don't come up with a bond, and several other places that decommissioning would begin rather than a permit, which is.
Yeah, we could
Yeah,
do
so
that.
I think the point of what you're getting at is still valid, it's just a matter of maybe
You're right,
how
right.
how we word it, and it's not saying that you revoke the permit, but, yeah, something else.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, that's all I was getting at, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, I think we
But
can.
yeah, I think we can have that, something that has that, habitual violations triggered a determination of abandonment, yeah,
That's,
so that'll work.
Were there any other thoughts about the decommissioning chapter?
no, I didn't know we'd have this much fun,
Your definition of fun might be different.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all
It's
good.
interesting, it's interesting.
Define fun.
Yeah, is that in the
I think this
definition?
was the one chapter where we kind of wanted more of your direct guidance on this, so I think that it's all been helpful.
This has been good though, we've covered a lot of stuff here, so.
If you wanted to touch on anything else before we close today, I guess the emergency repair is a similar topic, so.
Well,
Gonna jump back there, Brad.
Yeah, Brad, cause
Yep.
so, and this is, I'm glad we're doing all this is great. I'm confused if one quits working, I'm just trying to understand what's the total, do we have any sense of what the total amount of time is once one stops working to it's gone? I mean, cause there's 365, and then there's a bunch of 90s, and if you say you're doing something, you get 180, and then after the 180, and then you end up not doing something, and then you got another 365 because it's not a hazard. So I'm just trying to picture, just driving through western Iowa last week and seeing all these not turning. I'm thinking, how long can they sit there, not turning, before they just have to be gone? And I'm just having a hard time pulling that out of this.
Well, a lot of them that aren't turning, my understanding is they've already got enough juice in the batteries and.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of it is, you know. And I only know that from people that come from Colorado and told us that. But, I think we just determined here to answer your first question, I think we talked about 30 days.
I
That's a,
Well,
that's a damage
so,
event.
yeah,
That's
it's
the
one
damage,
damage,
that's the
it's 30
damage
days to get
concern,
it.
right, and that's, which is great.
If we wanted to create more work for Jared and Zach, I'm all in favor of that. Is you've got, you put in like, I don't know what you call it, a matrix for the setbacks and everything. If there was a matrix like that, a damaged individual turbine, that's,
It's funny you mentioned that, cause I just wrote down a chart of, cleanup expectations.
timeline.
Like a
Yeah,
timeline
and,
for different things.
perfect, something that a supervisor would understand, so no true silver words.
No guarantees, if or when that's gonna happen, but I made a note of that.
As far as the ones that are not operational, if they're sitting there with gear oil running down the tower on them, I'm pretty sure they're not operational.
Yep, I would say
And
that, that's kind of like.
who's going to track that, I mean? Because if they're sitting there leaking oil out on the ground, that's almost getting into the EPA world.
I agree with
I
you
mean,
100% on that.
There's a lot of different things going on there.
We talked about
learned a
that when
little
we
bit
were in
about that.
Mechanicsville, about, they thought there was some oil in the nacelle up there, and so they were concerned about, if it got blown up and it went over, that it was gonna go into the creek, and they talked to somebody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the DNR.
Yes.
And they said, if there's an environmental violation, they don't hold the leaseholder responsible, they hold the landowner responsible. And we would want, in the insurance coverage or something like that, to say that the developer is responsible for any environmental damage and penalty.
Yeah, that was a big point of thing that I learned there was, my understanding was the landowner tried to kind of leverage DNR to help their cause because of the threat of the oil situation. The DNR kind of said, well, we'll just act like we never had this conversation because it's your baby and not theirs. That's how I understood that situation.
And they didn't have any insurance requirements up there.
Because we walked away from it saying exactly what Tom just said. We've gotta put something in this ordinance to put that back on the responsibility of that developer.
Well, and especially when we consider, I know, like, we decided initially, or not, maybe not initially, but eventually, that we were gonna do just a wind, and now we're back to a wind and solar, so when we're talking about, contaminations, we know that that solar contaminates all of the soil because of the. Right, whatever's in there, I don't know, but I know it.
There's some rare metals.
Rare metals, what I thought, yeah, and,
That would be an environmental.
so that would be an environmental too, so that's one thing we gotta think of is we're now talking about both, decommissioning, we're talking about both types of sites. I don't know, we've been so much on windmills, even me, I
But
think,
all we
we
need,
kind of forget, wait, we're talking about both now.
all we need to do is put that in insurance requirements, that insurance policy or the developer is responsible for any environmental damage or penalties.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. Doesn't matter where it's wind or solar.
Yeah, we gotta have something in there, whatever it looks like, we'll figure out.
Thanks for mentioning
Somebody Newberry, leases have already been signed, and that may already be something they've given up. The right.
that. They might have given it up, but they'll be responsible for it if it's on your property.
Oh, on our, not the lease signers.
And I don't know, that's why I'd ask if, what those leases, if there's a standard insurance coverage for the landowner for any damage, I don't know, you would think there would be, I don't know, but we want that, we want.
I've heard that.
Well, anyway, we want the liability to
Yes,
cover
me,
any non-participating owners, and if it needs to cover participating landowners, I don't know.
Well, if it can, it can.
If it can, it can.
That specific question's gonna come down to an attorney on two sides possibly, that we won't be in the middle of necessarily.
Yeah.
We haven't
If
been
it's on
able to get a hold of any leases, they're people aren't willing to give them up, so we know what's going on. So, it would be nice to know.
Isn't that maybe why Mechanicsville's having such an issue with him suing them? We don't know what he signed. You know, he might have given away their rights. I think a lot of them say they have to decommission them, but the mess that's left is up to the farm.
I think that they said that was before there was no county ordinance, there was no insurance. And so I think they probably agreed to clean up part of the mess, but they didn't agree to clean it up in a satisfactory manner.
Yeah,
But
it
you're
was
gonna
a,
cover us.
it was a disagreement as to what was satisfactory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't foresee that.
Yeah. So next, I know we were talking about doing this every couple of weeks.
So we're both gonna be gone
You
next
guys are
week,
gonna
so.
be, yeah, they're gonna be gone, so do we need to go further
Maybe
out?
At the earliest, the 20.
Good, I'm.
I'd be
I need an
available 2
extra
weeks from
week
today.
between,
And then Zach is.
Yeah, I'm not available the next 2 weeks. Jared could be available the 22nd, so it'd have to be the 22nd or the 29th.
I will try to come up with a number for liability.
And if I may say so, for posterity's sake, if this all goes bad, that's Brian Carter's fault. Here, I said it's been said, that's it.
Sandy?
Put that in the ordinance.
Or
Rose,
Rose, that's Sandy, that's Rose.
I'm Cindy.
Okay.
Just so you know. Cindy.
I called you Sandy, I'm used to it.
That's okay, I'll answer you.
Well,
When you started this process, we had roughly 20 pages of a wind ordinance, and you thought it would take 3 months to get through it. Now you've thrown in solar and battery, and the ordinance is now over 40 pages.
Thank you.
Are you still anticipating getting through this in 3 months?
I am.
yes.
Okay.
We've got a number of the things, like what we just talked about, the environmental damage, that will apply to both wind and solar.
Okay, is this how the work sessions are generally done, the jumping around? I mean.
Well, we're mostly focused here on the decommissioning, and then the
Can we
bond.
know where you plan to go next time? So
well,
we're more
we didn't know
prepared?
where we were going this time in time to get there. We had a holiday and they couldn't get the agenda. But yeah, I think that's not a problem. We can try to put something on there that say what section or.
But in general, yeah, we're gonna try and pick a section or two and go through it each time, so it'll be a certain
if it's
spot. And
individual-
like,
there were a
like
couple of-
today, where we started decommissioning, but sometimes there's things that connect to other parts of the ordinance, so
Right,
you
it's
end
by
up jumping
necessity.
around a little bit.
And, well, since it wasn't anything, I can talk about anything I want here for a second. I would like, when you get a chance in your spare time, if you would drop a section, I originally said I didn't think it was a good idea and I hadn't thought, but there needs to be a public contact during
I
construction,
think we added something like that in there,
operation,
yeah.
and decommissioning, so that, because you can't have a project that size without something going wrong or somebody saying, who do I call? That there needs to be a developer contact for that.
Yeah, I think we added something that covers
Something
that,
like
so
that.
we can talk about that when we get to that section, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it.
Okay, I just wanted.
It's Brian Carter.
Yeah, and if
I didn't say it wasn't
this meeting seemed a
Brian
little
Carter.
disjointed,
I
it's
didn't
Brian
say
Carter's
that.
fault.
I thought that was good. I thought we should reach a consensus on it.
I think we all do, you know. No, we did add something in there, though, we'll talk about that when we get to
So,
that section.
if this one, if we have a little bit longer run, we wanna do emergency response next, and then have, I know we already have down in here as part, that the individual fire chiefs sign off, but do we wanna then invite, you know, the Yarmouth Fire Chief, Brian Heater,
It's the players.
yeah, the players, yeah. Because I think there's a benefit to that, and having them in the room if we're gonna talk emergency response, to have those people are gonna be making that response here.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Rose.
So if the agenda comes out with a new draft on a Friday and we work through it, is it more beneficial for us to send you our questions via email or to voice them as we're doing now?
It's probably be more beneficial to email us. We get no offense, we get a lot of information, and a lot of it is the same thing. And you know what I mean? One person says this, and then another person says the same thing, and so we get a lot of that. And I'm not complainant mind at all, but we're reading it and digesting it as best we can.
Okay.
And I know you guys are too, so.
I have a quick question. I was reading the ordinance, did I miss where the minimum height the turbines can be? Like if we go 750 and we have millions of birds that their average height is maybe 700 feet, they'll go right into them? Or we can, I know some ordinances have 250 feet, 450 feet for the minimum because of the conservation part. Are we gonna have something to address that, the height?
I couldn't tell you that for sure, but I know the one that they're planning on putting up is 650 footers.
And that's where
That's the ones they're planning.
a big chunk of millions of birds are gonna go right through that, the soaring birds especially. the
That was
eagles.
Brian Carter's idea. At first, they were only gonna do 250.
Well,
I think we just need to get down to the bottom of
I
this.
mean, maybe you lose your swans, I'm just trying to, and bats go on a low migration too, so I'm trying to figure this out. We go so high, but we're gonna have a mass, cause they go right through northwest Des Moines County. You're gonna have that mass, 8 million in one night, one of the nights you'll see, and that's a low soaring bird. How, you're gonna go right into it, they're not used to these high things, and we're gonna have a mass casualty. So we gotta do something with the height of these to,
How's
that
the
part?
wildlife
With
mitigation, how long
with
is that
the
section?
US Wildlife or the,
Say, you
or
wanna
the
dip
island
into it right now?
No.
All right, I was like,
No, that's still-
I mean, our conservation.
I knew, like, I'm kinda
talking
ready
about
to
it,
get
so
out.
I didn't read it.
About this
Yeah,
is a
no, I think we
big
need to look
deal.
at it too.
Like, why wouldn't you want a height maximum?
Yeah, I'm
While
trying
we
to
have it
figure
open
this
to
out,
the
why we would
Well,
have a mass casualty event, which will happen. That's all I'm asking, I'm just saying if we could look at the height.
Rose, what do you have?
No, don't let Rose speak again. I mean, what'd she say?
Isn't it 750?
Where did you get the 650?
Evie. The lady from Colorado told me that the ones out here was planned to be 650 foot, that came right from her.
That's not the permit,
It's not right.
Because another source said 697.
So
So what,
Again,
what
With the
source is
with
that?
the blades, what is it, the height
Can't
plus the,
control
plus the blades? is what-
Well,
She's
eyeball's
talking about
mine,
tip
that's
height
where I
there.
heard mine.
She's talking about tip height there,
Okay.
at the end of the blade.
Top of the blade at size point.
But we can't and we're not doing the ordinance based on any one project, proposed, not
Right.
proposed. We're looking at it, so we could have somebody come in here with the way it's written right now, I suppose, and try to say they wanted to have turbines 1,500 feet tall. I mean, now that might hit problems with setbacks, I don't know, but we can't, and they can't do it based on any one specific project. And I understand you guys have somebody in your backyard and you're concerned, and that you should be probably. But, and you guys know that too. We can't base any ordinance on any one particular project. And that's not what we're trying to do.
But for the future, I mean, you could set maximums for future projects.
Well, that's true, and that's why I'm saying, the Yarmouth one who's been here, I think, there's been the guy, that paratrooper from Yarmouth, yeah, who's been here?
Jacob?
Jacob, yeah, and then Brian, who's from Danville, and then, Burlington just changed over, who is it now?
I believe.
For who?
Okay.
Robert Berg's the fire chief,
Tubes.
Tubes is the,
No, Tubes is a
Tubes
fire
is
chief.
the chief,
Fire chief.
Robert is the
fire
marshal.
Okay. Yeah, but somebody from, you're right, we should have somebody from each of them here, and, yeah, so.
So doesn't the county have an emergency response department?
Emergency management.
Emergency
Yeah.
management?
Yeah.
I mean, are they?
And they should be part of, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is,
Okay.
let's, if we do the emergency response, let's get, and I think Shane said, let's get the players here, right? And have them be a part of that. And as we're going through, there's a benefit to us with, if this ends up in litigation, to say, hey, you know, when it comes to road use and management, well, we have Brian here, you're an expert in that, right? You've done a little bit of it, right? So for each part, you know, when we get into things where we're talking about the environmental aspect, we can have Chris here at least, I don't know who else would have expertise in that, but yeah, as we're going through that, we can do those things. And I think emergency response, if we're working backwards of the ordinance, that's next, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, does it normally go, do you make updates now based on today that will be in a new draft? Or how often?
Typically. Let's say we might be time crunched, cause I'm gonna be out on vacation, Jerry's gonna be at a conference. So,
We've made note of all the.
we have notes of
Yeah.
that, I'm not gonna guarantee that all those will be done by the next work
I
session.
thought you
but
already
I
had a
think-
vacation.
Probably did. I'm always on vacation, so I'm not gonna guarantee that all those changes for that section that we discussed today will be made, but I think the intent is we get them done as soon as we can. But then next time we can go over the emergency response section and focus on that, and at some point we'd have the changes to present on
Right.
the, potentially by the next meeting, but I'm not gonna guarantee it, cause I know we're not gonna be around very much the next
Right.
week and a half, so.
But we
So
will
who
put
will
on the-
invite those?
We will put on the agenda what it's gonna be about, and you will get the draft, so you'll have a chance to look at it like we do too. It'll be on-
And they'll be formally invited, these,
Be what?
Yes.
by you guys? Okay.
So then do we wanna commit to having it be emergency response?
Emergency response next time.
What about the conservation too? Do we wanna just invite?
Do we wanna
Chris?
try and do both of them, or?
I
How
can
many of
list
these
them
are we gonna
both.
end up having?
I can list them both, and then if you don't hit the second topic, at least it's listed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanna prioritize emergency management if you're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
invite.
if we're gonna
then
have
you're
them there,
specific
yeah,
for that.
then do, and one at a time, I mean, we're here, it's almost noon. So, I think one's good, right?
Emergency response might take a while too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So do you want it on there, or?
let's do emergency response, and yeah, we'll.
Okay.
Works for me.
Man, you guys have been fantastic today, everybody except for Ryan Drew, but anyway.
We wanna thank you folks again for being interested, and giving us these opinions and that, you know, they don't go over our head. We do absorb a lot of this stuff, but, sometimes this old brain don't absorb what it should. And I know there's gonna be people upset with us, no matter what way it goes, but we're trying our best. I think I'm speaking for all three of us. So thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.